Welcome back, everyone, to Issues of Faith. We have with us as our guest Brad Perry. He is Bible and history teacher at Brentwood Academy. He's also the co-founder of The Public, an organization which talks about anti-racism there in Williamson County. And again, glad you're here. As we went to break, I was saying I wanted to talk about the future. And I know that in the last few weeks, it might be easy to be incredibly frustrated. Perhaps there's a feeling that there is going to be real change, but also just how far we have to go. And so my question to you is, where do you think we're headed? Where are we going to be in the next few years? Can we bridge this divide? Are we headed in a positive direction? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm generally a hopeful person, though, we can have our days. But, on the individual level, in many ways, and this is not very exciting, as I said to you in the break, but it's one step at a time. It's one day at a time. It's learning and sitting down and having that next conversation. We do know that based on the analysis by the experts that at some point, 2035, 2040, a majority of our country is going to be non-white. So that's where we're headed. And so that's what we need to be, at some level preparing for. I know, in my faith tradition, Christianity, that the Apostle John gives us a vision in the book of Revelation of every tongue, tribe, and people group, people from everyone, worshiping God together. Okay. And then Jesus says in the Lord's Prayer, "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." So when I talk to my students, and anyone, there's a sense that, hey, if it's going to be like that in heaven, we need to be about making it like that on earth. And that is not easy because we also have a lot of this historical baggage. But Dr. King spoke of the beloved community, and I think that his with his I Have a Dream speech, he's giving us a vision for the future. I mean, that was not a reality for his time when he talked about his children playing with white children hand in hand and those sorts of things, and that beloved community. And I think he's also probably, speaking a little bit to the vision that John had. But we don't want to wait for heaven to experience it. That wasn't how Jesus lived his life. He did fight injustice, and even with him turning over the tables of the money changers, we see a sense of a God who loves justice. He wants it to roll down like a mighty stream. And so those are the visions, and so I think we want to try to, in all of our systems, whatever they are, schools, businesses, policing, whatever, we want to see a more equitable system. And in most cases, we can see statistically the prison system, okay, the way the law is dealt with, all those things, there are inequities because of our history, I believe. And so we need to, and once again, some of these battles are longer than others, but I think they're worth it. And it's taking that one step each day. I know some of the things that we've even been talking about the monuments and Confederate flags, and those don't change systems, but there is sort of an oppression that those things leave in a community, and even a community like Franklin. So we'd like to see those things change as well.
I was going to ask about the monuments. I wonder, do you feel like that is worthy of this discussion, or is it kind of a sidetrack? And so often things get so political, and then people dig in on one side or another before you even get to the topic of race. Or maybe everything's race, but it seems like it's hard to even get to the topic of race without having to go through several things before we even get to that kind of sidetrack us. How do you feel about that? And is monuments one of those things? Or it sounds like you're saying monuments it's a very important part of this overall discussion.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think everything's woven together. I mean, at some level, if you talk to your brothers and sisters of color in the community, they want the same opportunities at jobs that you do, that I do, the same opportunities to live in the same neighborhoods, to have educational opportunities, to be treated fairly, by the law. So those are really important things, right? Those daily impact our lives. I do think, though, at the same time, that the things like the Confederate flag, and we have a Confederate soldier in our town square, they leave. I mean, I have African American friends who grew up here who don't feel comfortable in downtown Franklin. this place that we tout as this, quaint little community, and that we do have a history, we do have a story to tell. I'm not for, ripping it down and throwing it away. I just think there's a more appropriate place for our Confederate statue, probably at the Carnton Mansion, where there's a where there's a Confederate cemetery, not in the most prominent place in our center of our town that sort of says this is our highest value. The Williamson County seal has a Confederate flag on it. And so we saw how quickly Mississippi moved to change that. We've seen NASCAR deal with the Confederate flag as well. And obviously, those are two sort of entrenched Southern institutions when we think about the state of Mississippi and NASCAR. And so even our Williamson County flag is the Confederate flag. Well, the Confederate flag wasn't even put on our county seal until 1968, the same year that Dr. King was assassinated, was murdered. And there's also a really interesting history about when many of those statues and the flags really started to be displayed publicly and even put on Mississippi's flag. It was much later than people think. And that's another story and history that we want to tell. So we think it's important because symbols do matter, and they do state the values of a community and what you want to honor.
That's fascinating about the Confederate flag there in Williamson County on the seal, that in 1968. All right, we have about a minute and a half left. Let's say you're talking directly to a pastor of a church, African-American church and a white church. What would you say to them? How do they want to get engaged in this? They want to be part of it. What do you recommend to them? And in the final minute, 15 seconds we have.
Yeah, I think, bottom line, I think that, if you really believe that all people are created in the image of God, so that's fundamental, and that we really need each other. I mean, we all have different stories to tell. We come from different backgrounds, and so we can become better, more whole human beings when we're in each other's lives. And churches are just parts of greater communities. And so if we're seeing those things happen in churches, we can make our communities, our cities, more whole places. I would love to see, more intentionality about integrating churches both ways, about being intentional for white churches, especially because that's our dominant culture in our county, to be intentional about recruiting and getting great teachers and pastors and youth leaders of color in the leadership of congregations. And so I think there's, those are real specific, tangible things to do. But once again, there's a lot of work to be done.
There's a lot of work to be done. Thank you. A very good conversation. Brad Perry, Bible and history teacher at Brentwood Academy, also co-founder of The Public. Thank you for being with us. And thanks to all of you for being with us on Issues of Faith. Have a great day, everybody.